I'm Riley,
And I'm Roni,
and this is the Plan to Eat podcast.
where we have conversations about meal planning, food, and wellness to help you answer the question, what's for dinner? Hello, welcome back to the podcast. Today we have a very special episode. It's a surprise for everyone.
Including for us.
We don't know, but we're hoping that this episode has lots of tips and tricks and little nuggets of information that are going to help you in the kitchen. We are doing some deep dives on topics of our choice. And Riley and I didn't tell each other what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to be learning along with all of you. Riley's going to be learning along with all of you as well. So let's just dive right in. Riley, tell us about your topic.
I get to go
what?
first. I don't want to go first.
Yeah, you got to go first.
Oh, I'm nervous. Okay. I don't really know how to segue into all of this. Okay, here's how I got to my deep dive, and then I'll tell you kind of intro what it is.
Okay.
So when we were talking through the dinner dilemmas, a lot of people's dinner dilemma was that they didn't want a meal plan because what if they didn't want that for dinner that night?
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting, right? Because it's interesting, and it's definitely a personality type, right? There's many people who ask that question, and there's other people who don't think to even ask that question. They just meal plan, and they're like, we got to eat, so there's got to be food on the calendar. We've got to pick something. We've got to purchase something. So this idea around cravings and food cravings and what I'm going to want this day kind of started to pique my interest, right? Because to me, it's no big deal if I have, what do I have on the meal plan tonight? This Thai noodle salad. That's what we're having for dinner tonight. But we're just making it. I don't feel overtly like I'm craving it, but I also don't feel like I'm not craving it,
Yeah.
I hope it tastes good and everybody's gonna have dinner, So this idea around what your cravings are for dinner doesn't affect me a ton, but I also am okay with moving it around. If I didn't want it tonight, I'll make it tomorrow night. These are the ingredients I purchased for the week. This is what we're having. So an interesting thing happened recently that really pushed me all the way into choosing food cravings as my deep dive. Because my daughter got sick with a stomach bug, and she didn't eat for many, many days. And the one thing she wanted to eat when she did eat was carrots.
Oh,
Which
interesting.
is so bizarre.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure my kids have never just been I'm really would like a carrot. When they're not sick,
Yeah.
They will eat them. We eat them. I cook them and, serve them raw, etc. But they're not just carrot fiends, I'm really hungry. I'm going to grab a handful of carrots and go sit on the porch. That's not them. Okay. And then my other daughter got sick with a stomach bug weeks later. And she also wanted carrots.
Oh, interesting.
So weird. And so that sent me Googling. Yes, it sent me Googling. And what I realized in this process is just how the body is very interesting, right? What it tells us we want. And sometimes it's asking for energy, comfort, electrolytes, hydration, dopamine, maybe rest. Maybe you don't want to eat at all and you just need a break. Or emotional regulation. And sometimes cravings are about nutrient deficiencies and sometimes they're not. But the carrot thing is what really sent me. These two roads led me to the same end, right? Food cravings. I'll talk about the carrots for a second. So they contain beta-carotene, which is the precursor to vitamin A. And vitamin A deficiency can lead to, this is what I got on the internet. Yes, I'm not a researcher. I'm not an expert, but this is where it led me, okay? It can actually extend stomach bugs because it has to do with the lining of your gut and lining of your intestines. And so I took that to say, okay, maybe my kids actually are deficient in vitamin A because their body is we're using all of this up in this process of being sick. We didn't have a lot. It can extend stomach-related illnesses,
to not have as much vitamin A?
What?
To not have as much vitamin A extends it?
Yes. If you are deficient in it and you have a stomach bug, it can actually extend it.
Okay.
Extend the illness. A lot of people, though, when they think of food cravings, they're I want salt, I want sugar, I want dirt. If you're craving dirt or ice, it's anemia. Likely you need iron. Your body really, Your body really does and can tell you what it needs. Now, we've also been conditioned to like want and think other things, you know. You go into a movie theater and you immediately want popcorn and a Coke or, you know, whatever
Right.
your cravings are. Probably
Yeah.
whatever you had as a kid at the movie theater. You know, it's like, oh, I want a little sweet treat after lunch. Like that might mean though something else, but you know, like maybe you didn't eat enough lunch. Or maybe you have a blood sugar crash, or like maybe that's your mid-morning treat because you have a sugar craving and you're like, maybe you're super stressed out. That could also be a reason for a sugar craving. Poor sleep. You're sad. Our cravings actually can tell us a lot about what's going on with us. Unfortunately, though, we have also done a lot of things to like diminish the way we listen to our bodies just through existing in the world. So we've lost touch with our body signals through dieting because we've basically forced ourselves to like, I'm going to do this instead of that, rushing through a meal and not paying attention to how does this taste? Am I full? Am I not full enough? Like, does this need, is there something else I want with this? That kind of idea. If we ignore hunger, it can also change our signals because if you ignore hunger, then you might have a blood sugar crash, which might make, then you want sugar to
Mm.
like resolve that problem. If we rely on caffeine, if we're eating distracted, kind of like the rushing one, and then if we're disconnecting from being full, if you're just like, well, I just want the ice cream. Well, but I'm super full. Okay, but I'm going to force myself to do this anyway because I want it. We're going to disconnect from some body signals and or following a really rigid food rule. Like we don't eat that for breakfast. We don't eat that for dinner. We only have this then, etc. I thought of you in that because you're like, I love pie for breakfast. But a lot of people would say, that is not a breakfast food. I think the kids are important to note with cravings. And I think you have to balance it, right? Because kids can be very picky in particular. And kids have to like learn to like some vegetables because of like mouthfeel and, you know, like there's pickiness around food, right? But I think kids are really important to pay attention to because they probably are the most aware of what they're asking for,
Mm.
the most aware of what their body is asking for because they haven't spent all these years ignoring it. Which I think as a parent, it is pretty important for me to be reminded of that because if they're like wanting something, I have to filter it through that idea. Like the carrot thing, I was like, no, you're not going to have carrots. Like you're in the middle of throwing up. Like I'm not going to give you carrots. Like to me, that's not what I've ever been taught, right? Like what's the brat diet? Like
Yeah.
bananas, rice, apples, tea. What's the tea?
Toast.
Toast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's what you eat when you're sick. Or like, what did you eat when you were sick, Roni?
Like saltine crackers.
And ginger ale or Sprite?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And so like my mind almost like couldn't comprehend like the carrot thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then because I've been kind of already processing through the food cravings and like and how that relates to meal planning is why like when they wanted carrots, I was like, it piqued my interest because I'm like, oh, hold on a second. This is the most random craving. And this is what I was going to talk about anyways, food cravings and how they affect us. So I'll run through a couple of cravings and what it could point to. So sugar cravings, I already went through that one. Chocolate cravings could relate to a need for magnesium, comfort, dopamine, or hormonal shifts.
Mm.
Salt cravings could point to electrolyte loss, dehydration, too much, you know, like a lot of sweating. If you're recovering from an illness, you may need more salt, pregnancy, or stress. And so you might want pretzels, soup, broth, like salty broth, pickles, French fries, crackers. A lot of people would probably think that this was a carb craving, but a carb craving could look like a salt craving.
Oh,
Because
interesting.
think about a lot of carbs that we eat, like processed carbs that we eat are very salty.
Mm-hmm.
Goldfish, popcorn, you know, etc. So carb cravings could mean a need for quick energy, nervous system support, stress recovery, poor sleep, or under eating protein and fat. If you're under eating those two, your body might try to compensate with carbs because if that's
Mm-hmm.
already what you're giving it, you're like, oh, if it asks for more of this, well, it'll give it, you know, or she'll give it to us. Like if your body was talking to you. And examples of that, toast, pasta, cereal, rice. So note the difference, I think, between the carb craving and the salt craving
Mm-hmm.
because toast, pasta, cereal, and rice, those aren't overtly salty. And so just like kind of like noting those two things, I think are interesting. Red meat cravings, certainly low iron, low B12, need for more protein, maybe low zinc. And it's common for women's cycles, pregnancy, postpartum, and athletes often crave those things. You could also, it also said anemia, could be that one too. So fruit cravings could help support like hydration. If you're dehydrated, you might want fruit. You might need more vitamin C. You might need some quick sugar, like quick glucose. And if you're sick, it could be because they're easier to digest.
Mm.
And you might want watermelon, oranges, berries, or smoothies. Fruit one's kind of obvious. Dairy cravings are related to low calcium, low protein, low fat, and low satiety. So if you're like eating and you're like still hungry, if you're not satiated with your meal, you might have needed more fat or more dairy in that. So, and I've already mentioned this one, but ice and dirt cravings, if you're related to iron deficiency, it's actually funny because when you're pregnant, they'll ask you if you're craving things that are not food.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And sometimes if you were to say to your doctor, I'm craving dirt, they're going to immediately check your iron. And most likely you are very low. And if you're
Do we know what ice has to do with that? Like, what
I actually don't know what ice has to do with it, but it is a very common one.
Yeah.
If you just like crave tons and tons of ice.
Uh-huh.
And this is another one I think you could very easily become addicted to and like change your signals, right? Because I know a ton of people who really like Sonic ice, like the little pelleted ice, and then they'll buy the pelleted ice maker for their house. And then they like love the pelleted ice and then they eat the pelleted ice every day. Might not be related to anemia, might just be that you've created a new like what is it called?
Sensory habit or something.
Yeah, like oral fixation.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Like chewing gum or dipping, like those kinds of things that you just like the way that feels in your mouth.
Uh-huh.
It basically becomes another one of those.
Yeah.
Let's see what else. If you are sick and craving certain things, there are reasons why that could be. Your appetite and cravings can shift really dramatically when you're sick. So it's because your body is relocated out. Sorry, what am I trying to say? Reallocated, not relocated. Reallocated energy to your immune response, tissue repair, the need for hydration, and inflammation management. Like your body may not, it got a lot going on when you've been sick. And so your body's going to gravitate towards foods that are easy to digest, that are hydrating, familiar, comforting, energy efficient, kind of like we talked about, easy to digest foods, nutrient dense and soothing to the stomach. And so I think it's important to listen to your body, especially when you're sick. You and I have talked a lot about how we used to binge like biohacking podcasts, and some of those were related to fasting, 16-8 fasting, 48-hour fasting, fasting for a week, a month, etc. And so sometimes, and some people do fast when they are sick, like naturally. They just don't want anything. They don't want anything to eat. I think it's really important to pay attention to that and like not force the food, because what we know about fasting is that it produces autophagy, which is cell repair and regeneration. And so that actually could be your body's like, this is what we need right now. If like we're not going to digest food, we're going to do autophagy instead. And that's how we're going to recover from this illness. And I think that a lot of us have been taught to eat during illnesses, and I think, it's important to maintain hydration during illness, depending on what kind of illness you have. But it's just a note to make that like paying attention, especially when you're sick, to what you want is important, because it's probably when your body is screaming for the thing that it needs the most, and could help you kind of get back on the track of like, okay, this is what my body's actually needing from me. So I'm going to listen to it and I'm going to do this thing. And I'm not talking about like ice cream, after you've been having the stomach bug, but I think this is going to help me. This is what got me so interested. I was thinking about doing cravings around planning. But this all to me was so much more like this, like deeper dive on the nuances of what someone may want when they're sick, or what someone may want when they have a different need inside of their body. And so I never revisited the meal planning, but I think that it all relates back to meal planning. Because if you're sitting there at dinner and you're like, okay, what are we going to eat? Because I don't meal plan, I just plan around my cravings. And if you're like starting to notice, like you want pasta every single day, you might not be eating enough protein, and if so starting to pay attention to where your cravings are leading you. Okay, I want a big, crispy green salad with tons of fruit on it. Are you dehydrated? I personally still think that it's important to meal plan regardless of what you're craving, because of all the other benefits: time saving, money saving, energy saving, stress reducing, etc. But I think it's important if you're somebody who does plan around cravings, or just think they can't meal plan because their cravings are too daily on a whim, like it's important to pay attention to your body. So
I love it. What a cool topic. I
Thanks.
have, I was expecting to have questions. I don't really have questions, but I do have a couple anecdotes to add to it,
Okay.
which is
Yeah.
that it's actually funny. I just went out to lunch with my mom and we were talking about this same thing, which was when I was little, probably 5 years old, I would sneak butter. We like kept a butter,
Hmm.
like a butter container out on like a stick of butter
Hmm.
on, what do you call those things? A butter, it's like a plate with a lid,
A butter dish?
a butter dish,
Oh, I'm like,
a
is there,
butter
should it be more
dish.
complicated than that?
It's no, my brain just wasn't working. Yeah, we used to keep a butter dish on our dining room table. And I told my mom, I have a distinct memory of a lot of Friday nights growing up. We would have homemade pizza and movie night on Fridays.
Hmm.
And I have a distinct memory of like sneaking into the kitchen while everybody else was watching the movie and like taking a hunk out of the butter with my finger and eating it. And my mom was like, were you getting in trouble for eating the butter? And I was like, well, I think so, but I think it's because I was like putting my hands in the butter,
Yep.
but
Hmm.
and so we were talking about it and I was just like, I think that I was probably just like needing fat or something,
Hmm. Hmm.
or maybe even salt, because I think we
Hmm.
always had salted butter. And so it's really, to me, it's a really interesting idea, particularly when it comes to kids, because looking back on that, I'm like, my body knew what it needed, even if I like quote unquote wasn't supposed to have that.
Hmm.
And like butter's such like a unusual thing for a child to just want to eat like 3 tablespoons of butter.
Hmm. It is unique, but I think the butter craving is super fascinating, especially around children because nourishing traditions. Who's the author of that book?
Sally Fallon.
Yes. Like she's a huge butter fan for children because
Uh-huh.
it's so good for the brain.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a stable energy source, so good for the brain, gives a lot of satiety. It's good for your hormones. Like it's good for so many things. She's a big fan of kids eating butter.
Yeah. It's high in
And
calories when your
it's
brain needs a
also,
lot of calories.
mhm, yeah. So I did a little quick look, and butter cravings reflect a desire for fat, calories, satiety, comfort, fat soluble nutrients,
Oh,
nervous system regulation, hormonal support. And actually, I'm really glad you brought this up because I just got an email from Dave Asprey, who is a biohacking guy. I know you know who he is, but for our listeners, I'm literally working on this thing, this podcast. What am I going to talk about? All of that. And I get this email from him that says the silent deficiency accelerating your aging.
oh,
And so I'm like, what are we doing? Okay. And he said that if fat soluble vitamins are the thing that
yeah.
are aging us very quickly because we are not consuming enough of them, we're all deficient in them.
Uh-huh.
And so he basically, it's a sales email, but the Western diet leaves you low in vitamins A, D, K, and E, which I was really piqued in my interest in this because he mentioned vitamin A, and that's what I thought my kids were struggling with. And they don't work by themselves; they like regulate each other. And so if you're low in them, you start to go low in all of them because they work together.
Mm-hmm.
And the sales email, but I want to say that he's selling a product, and it is suspended in MCT oil,
Right.
which is they're fat soluble, and that allows your body to actually utilize the vitamins that you're consuming.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just so much more to this entire idea than we can even almost comprehend as like regular people.
Yeah.
Like the more that I know, the more I'm like, oh my goodness, it's all so connected. Like
Yeah.
we are deficient in vitamins, but we're not eating enough of this and we're eating too much of that, and like this fat and that fat, or this fat versus that fat, and how fat impacts like our vitamin stores, but how we can even, if we were going to consume a vitamin, like is it doing us any good to just pop a vitamin D pill if we don't have that like suspended in some kind of oil that's fat soluble that allows our body to utilize it, etc.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me.
Though this actually reminds me of like when I was listening to the Dave Asprey's podcast, he had somebody like Tim Ferriss or somebody on there,
Mm-hmm.
and they talked about this because Tim Ferriss was like, yeah, a lot of times when I take vitamin D, it like kind of makes me feel nauseous. And Dave Asprey was like, well, you need to make sure that you're taking it with fat. Like you shouldn't be in a fast, right? Like that's Dave Asprey's thing, for
Yeah,
those who
right.
don't know,
Fasting.
is like
Mm-hmm.
he's really into the intermittent fasting. And so he's like, you shouldn't be taking vitamin D if you're in a fasting period, because it needs the fat in order for your body to absorb it. So like if you're taking something like vitamin D that's a fat soluble vitamin
Mm-hmm.
and it's making you feel sick, it's probably because your body is not able to actually like absorb it and like use it the way that it was intended to be used in your body. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think the whole thing is so fascinating.
Yeah. So the other thing that I wanted to mention
Oh,
related to
yeah.
this, I just saw this on Instagram the other day too, which was the idea of like you get done eating and you're craving sweets, which
Mhm.
is ding, ding, ding,
Yeah.
my issue. I every meal I want something sweet. And the lady was on the Instagram post was saying that a lot of the time that you might have eaten a very well-rounded meal and like you feel satiated, or even like you said, like you feel overly full. Like Thanksgiving, you feel overly full, yet you still want the pumpkin pie. And Thanksgiving's a different story, right? Like that's just like a whole made up thing in our head about like we need to eat all
I
of the things.
have to have the pumpkin pie at
Exactly. I'm never
Thanksgiving.
gonna have pumpkin pie ever again in my life. I need to eat it today. Uh, but she was saying like if you're craving things after lunch or after dinner, sometimes it's an issue that the meal you were eating didn't involve enough like oral stimulation. So like there
Fascinating.
wasn't like enough variety of textures and
Mhm.
flavors in the thing that you were eating. And so then you're like, oh, I'm craving this like sweet thing to kind of like break up the feeling in your palate. So like that's super interesting too.
So interesting. I felt like I couldn't go deeper in my deep dive, right, for the purposes of this podcast, but
Yeah.
thinking about I would love to look into more of like why we want when, you
Oh
know,
yeah, for sure.
because I do think it's interesting and I tend to want something sweet after lunch, in
Yeah.
particular after lunch. Now, my kids don't do well with dessert after dinner. We're trying to ramp them down, not up.
Yeah.
And so we have shifted, like if we're going to have dessert, we have it in the afternoon. And I don't know if it's that like habit shift that's like,
Hmm.
oh, well, now it's time for a sweet treat.
Yeah.
Have you seen that guy on Instagram? It's like, sweet treat.
Yes. Yes.
I said it like him and now I feel silly, though he is very funny. But I don't know if it's that or if it's something else that I'm
Yeah.
missing in my
Hmm.
lunches because I probably need to put a little more thought into my lunches, to be honest.
Yeah. I do think that there is a conditioning aspect of it though,
Mhm.
because there have been times when I've been like, I'm giving up sugar for 30 days and like, then going back on sugar after
Mhm.
not eating it, that I don't crave it in the same way. So I do think
Mhm.
there's like a habitual nature of it where you're just kind
Yeah.
of like, well, I ate that spicy meal and now I need something sweet
Yeah.
to go with it.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is where I think it's actually cool how our bodies I think it's incredibly cool how our bodies adapt.
Hmm.
But I think it's also like how do you allow your body to adapt and not inhibit the signals that it's giving or influence the signals to be negative?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to have my body saying we need sugar when we don't.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know? Like I don't want that. I want my body to like be asking for the thing that it actually needs. And so then I'm paying attention to my body and what it needs. But
Hmm. Fascinating. I love
yeah,
it.
it's
Great
fascinating.
topic, Riley.
Thank you. I'm so excited to hear yours. Tell me.
Mine is so not as in depth as yours.
Oh, that's totally fine. We didn't
Uh,
talk about this at all, listeners. Okay. So
yeah, we didn't talk.
yeah, we
We
didn't
didn't
talk about it at
discuss
all.
parameters even. We just
Well,
said pick a topic.
yeah. I literally was like, I can't like 5 minutes before this. I can't wait to hear what you're gonna talk about today.
Yeah, I know. Okay, well, I'm talking about onions
Onions. Fascinating.
because I have been thinking about this idea basically since we read Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat.
Mm,
And one of the main things that she talked about in the fat chapter is that different fats have different applications. And that like totally makes sense. But then I was thinking about it the other day because like a recipe called for a red onion. And I was like, why does a recipe call for a red onion instead of a white onion? So my deep dive is like, let's talk about onions and when you use different kinds of onions. Oh, it was also related to shallots because I was like, I'm not going to buy a single shallot for this recipe. I have a yellow onion at my house. Why would I use a shallot instead? I know they're fancier, but I'm like, why would I? Shallots are so much smaller. I don't know. I was like feeling frustrated at a shallot the other day. So
I'm jumping the gun, but are you willing now to buy a shallot when you need a shallot?
I think so.
Oh, can't wait.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to go through each type of onion and the uses for them. So yellow onion is basically your default onion for cooking. If a recipe says use an onion, most likely they mean, and they don't specify a specific type of onion, they mean a yellow onion. Yellow onions are like a balanced flavor onion. So they're a balance of like a kind of like a bite, an oniony bite and sweetness. And they develop more sweetness as they cook. So they're really good for like low and slow cooking, putting things in the crock pot or braising or whatever, because they really develop sweetness over time. They're not as ideal for things like raw salads or like topping stuff, just because they're not as good raw as some other types of onions. So, best to be used in like soups, stews, roasting vegetables, stir fries, casserole. If you're caramelizing onions, yellow onion is the onion that you want to use. Okay, white onions, sharper and brighter in flavor than a yellow onion. So they have more of that like punchy onion forward flavor. They're really common in Mexican cuisine and just recipes where you want a more noticeable onion flavor. Because they're not as sweet, they're not as good for that slow cooking because they'll still taste like onions. Like it'll have a strong onion flavor rather than like that sweetness that you get from a yellow onion. So they're the onions that you find in salsa, pico de gallo, tacos. A lot of times people will use onions if they're doing like diced onions inside of a hamburger. They'll use white onion because it's more oniony, or like a relish, you use a white onion. Okay, red onions are best used raw or lightly cooked. Sorry. They have like a slight sweetness to them, but they have a really crunchy texture, which is why they're good to use raw. And they're not as ideal for the low and slow kind of cooking. So you use them in like salad sandwiches, topping your burgers, put them in your grain bowls. When you make pickled onions, you use red onion because it maintains that crunchiness better. And then it's really popular in Mediterranean cuisine. Shallots. They have a more mild and delicate flavor. You use a shallot when you don't want the onion to overpower a dish. So they are good to use for sauces and for more like delicate dishes. So things like salad dressing, vinaigrette, an egg dish, they go well with seafood. They're very popular in French cooking. If you're going to make a compound butter, you almost always want to use a shallot just simply because it's not going to overpower. And shallots is what you use if you're making like a crispy fried onion topping. Finally, we have scallions or green onions. So that's a mild onion. It almost has like a grassy flavor. It's not just a garnish, right? Like I think a lot of recipes just use a green onion as a garnish, but the white part or the light green part towards the bottom is a stronger onion flavor. Obviously, if you've ever tried that, like that's more oniony. And then the dark green tops are milder and more grassy. So you would use them raw as toppings for like soups and tacos and fried rice, baked potatoes, eggs, dips, but you can also use them cooked in stir fries, savory pancakes, dumplings, omelets, and noodle dishes. So here's some real world examples of a recipe and what onion you should use and why. So chili or soup, you would use that yellow onion. It's the default onion. It softens nicely and becomes savory and sweet over the long period of cooking. If you're having tacos, you could use a white onion or a red onion. The white gives a more sharpness, but the red would add sweetness and like a pop of color if you like that in your cooking. Salad dressing, you would do a shallot because it's less harsh particularly when it's raw, it's way less harsh than any other onion. As a burger topping, use a red onion because it's crunchy, but it's also mild enough to eat when it's raw. And then fried rice, green onions adds a fresh flavor, but it doesn't overpower the other flavors in the dish. And I mentioned this earlier, but caramelized onions, you use the yellow onion because it already has some sugars in it. So it's going to caramelize really nicely and give like a balance of a sugary and sweet flavor. So that's all my research about onions. The thing that I understand all of these things. However, my argument against some of these things is I always feel like when I eat a red onion raw, it feels so powerful. Like I was really surprised actually in my research about this, that like red onions are like, it's mild and it's sweet. I'm like, but I've had red onions before that like burned my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And so the older the onion is, the more spicy it can get. So potentially
Interesting.
if you're getting a red onion and it's like, wow, that was really spicy onion, it could be older. Like it could have taken a long time to get shipped to your grocery store or something like that.
Mm.
But that's kind of like my pushback against this is I'm like, anytime I have a red onion in something, almost always soak it in some vinegar to try and like lessen the punchiness of the onion flavor. I also don't like my breath to taste like onions, so I don't often eat raw onions anymore.
Yeah. I do the exact same thing with raw onions, except I just put them in water about
Oh
an
yeah.
hour before I want to use them because I
Hmm.
like it does make them like tempers that bite.
I think it might have been in salt, fat, acid, heat that she says you can put them in vinegar and it'll help take some of that, whatever the compound is
Mm-hmm.
that gives it that bite. And then she's like, and then if you're making a salad dressing or something, like then you can just use that vinegar in the salad dressing,
Oh, interesting.
and it kind of has like an added flavor
Yeah,
to
that's a
it
great
that
idea.
way too.
When we were reading Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, you might not remember the answer to this, and I'm putting you on the spot. But there was something that you don't cook with an onion because it'll like not allow it to caramelize.
Oh, tomatoes.
Tomatoes, that was
So
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
so if you have a dish that has onions and tomatoes in it, you'll, if the recipe author wrote it well, it'll call to like saute or caramelize your onions first before you add the tomatoes because there's something in the tomatoes. I don't know if it's the acid or something else that will prevent the onions from cooking further.
Yes, that was it. It's very important.
Uh-huh. It is important, but yeah, it's one of those things that you don't know. And as like a beginner cook, you might just be like, I don't have time to like wait for these onions to cook before I put all the stuff together, right? If you're trying to like make things quick.
Hmm.
And then you're like, ew, these onions are just like raw and crunchy.
Yes. Yeah. It would make you very frustrated if you were making something.
Yeah.
You're like, but why are these onions raw like that? That's pivotal.
Yeah.
Okay, so my next question for you is the one onion you did not mention, which I use a lot at my house, is a sweet onion.
You're right. I didn't mention sweet onions specifically. They're a type of yellow onion. So, like in the United States, we have like Vidalia onions or Walla Walla that come from Washington, and they are sweeter. So, they're extra good for things like caramelization and that like low and slow cooking. I think a good example is like, well, maybe most people haven't made this, but if you're doing like a sweet onion and bacon jam,
Hmm.
you would use a sweet onion. A lot of people use sweet onions for French onion soup. So, I mean, basically, I think they're basically just like a type of yellow onion. So, I guess that's why I didn't mention them specifically.
Hmm.
But yeah, they just have more of that natural like sweetness, sugar to them, I guess.
Sure. Well, the only reason I asked is because I use them so often. And like at our grocery store, they're in separate spots. Like pick a
Uh,
sweet, pick a yellow, pick a white. Growing up, we used to have tons of like wild growing onions in the yard.
oh yeah.
And I used to make pretend soup with them and make my brothers eat it. But I feel like it's just kind of fun to find a green onion somewhere just growing wildly. We went to this garden locally to pick peonies, and there's a flower that they have in it. I don't know if it's a flowering onion, but it is a little pom pom looking flower, and
Oh
the
yeah.
everything growing with it is it's onion, smells like
Yeah.
onion, looks like a green onion.
Yeah. I feel like I know what that is, but I don't know. I don't remember it right off the top of my
Yeah.
head. I just did a quick search to give you a little more information about the sweet onions. So they are higher in sugar and they're low in sulfur.
Oh,
So I guess
interesting.
maybe the sulfur is the thing that gives the onion the bite.
Hmm.
They also have thinner skins and a higher water content. So if you have sweet onions, you want to make sure you refrigerate them. I
Interesting.
refrigerate all of my onions, but some people do keep them in like the pantry. Yeah.
Cool.
Uh, I also think that at least around here, I feel like sweet onions are only in season certain times of the year. Like I feel like you can't find, or they're maybe only sweet, really sweet a certain time of the year. So I don't know. I just know that there's certain times of the year when there's like lots of sweet onions, and then sometimes I feel like they're hard to find.
Yeah. Red onions uh, are very beautiful.
Oh
And I have
yeah.
grown in my enjoyment of red onions over the course of my life. There is a place for them. Just a light onion. I'm a light raw onion girl. Like I don't like a lot, just a little, just a tiny bit, and they're so beautiful. So
Yeah. I like the color of red onions too. Really, they're like purple, right? I
yeah,
I heard this thing a few months ago. I don't remember if I told you about this, but that like purple is the least common color that people eat when it
interesting.
comes to fruits and vegetables. So like purple cabbage, blackberries, there's like
Eggplant.
eggplant. There's like the purple kind of cauliflower.
Yeah.
I think red onions would probably fall under that category too. And they have this type of polyphenol, which is called, I'm going to totally botch this, anthocyanins. Anyways, it's like an antioxidant that's like basically only found in purple fruits and vegetables. So it's important that we get purple colored fruits and vegetables in our diet because it has this special compound. So
Cool.
Yeah.
That was fun.
That was fun.
We should do it again.
Yeah, we should. The way to learn some interesting things.
I was not expecting you to talk about onions.
I had no idea what you were going to talk about, but I liked your topic a lot. I feel like we could just start a whole separate podcast and talk about food cravings and like the way that nutrients interact in your body.
Totally. Yeah, I went through a lot of topics to get there.
I
had to just like stop making lists of ideas that I had and just pick one.
That I did the same thing. Yeah. Well, yeah. So we've had this idea for a podcast for a couple months and now we're finally acting on it. And yeah, I went through a lot of different ideas too.
Yeah, I finally just had to say, okay, just pick one and just do something. It's just and then the kids craving carrots just kicked me there. I was like, okay, this is it. This is weird. And this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, it's such an interesting connection.
It is.
All right. Well, we thank you all for listening. And as always, you can leave a rating or review for the podcast. We always appreciate that. Love hearing from you guys. And if you liked this idea of us just talking about random stuff related to food, we'd love to know. If you have anything you want us to do a deep dive on, let us know. And I think that's it. So we'll talk to you again in 2 weeks.